Okay, we're live. Hey, Edgar, how are you?
What's up?
Welcome to the. Oh, is that police sirens out there?
Yeah, you're hearing sirens outside of my building.
Where are you at? Downtown?
Yeah, I live downtown, so um, city noise is just part of the draw.
Thanks everybody for coming and chatting with us. Hopefully, we'll get some people. I know Mayor Lucas is live right now. There's a KCK. I just passed it on my way home from my mother-in-law's at the police station
Okay.
on across from El Centro. So that's going on right now. So I know a lot of stuff's going on, but I know we wanted to talk, even if it's just you and me, about what's going on in our communities, in our Latinx, Chicanx communities here in Kansas City, and especially our own personal situations that are happening, and how we can support each other, and hopefully get over some of the stuff that we're into right now. Oh, and
First of
Nikki's
all,
here.
I see Nikki there, so hey, Nikki, what's up? Good
Hey,
to see
Nikki.
you. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
I gotta say, so the energy is a little different tonight because I think, first and foremost, there's not a lot of we can find joy in certain situations, and we can try to remain positive, but the reality is, like, we are in the middle of a global pandemic. You are seeing protests happening because of the murder of uh, um, a black man in Minneapolis. You're seeing all these other heavy, like, intersections of our community. You're seeing a lot of conversation on what's the appropriate way to demand justice. And so there's a lot of heavy conversations happening right now. And so, I think tonight it's a little bit different. It's not a happy-go-lucky episode of Chingón. It really is a testament to talk about. One, we're creating space tonight. We're holding space for those who have questions. I know, Deanna, you've been navigating your own journey, and how to be an ally and an accomplice in these spaces. And so I think hopefully you can share a little bit about that. And then, asking questions around, like, I mean, what's top of mind, and what are the things that are scaring you, or at least concerning you the most on these conversations. So I think that's the space that we're holding tonight, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep. And I just want to let it known, like, right now, like, my views, and I know probably Edgar feels the same way, are not the views of all Latinos in Kansas City. We have our personal journeys. Our families are probably maybe different than your families. Our experiences might be different. So that's why we wanted to have the community join us. So if you have questions, comments, we will say them out. Not that we're the experts, but just to get your voice out there. And hopefully at some point, we can get answers to your questions and comments, for sure. So where do we begin, Edgar? I've been waiting, like, to do this, but it's been it's been exhausting. And again, I think it's that whole thing that I posted. You feel guilty about even feeling exhausted, because why are we feeling exhausted? But at the same time, it's like all us, brown, black, our Asian American friends, our Native American friends, we all have been oppressed in some way, somehow. But right now, we need to support our Black community for sure. But it's just been tiring, and not sure what to say. And sometimes you feel like you're not saying the right things, or maybe you are,
I think it's important that, like, we not worry so much about what can be said, or, like, what is the right thing to say, as much as stand in solidarity and be supportive of our Black brothers and sisters out there.
Yeah.
These are incredibly difficult conversations to have. These are incredibly difficult discussions to coordinate and to address. And the reality is, when we are silent and we don't speak about these issues in support of our Black brothers and sisters, we are complicit.
Yeah.
And that is a harsh reality, but that is a harsh truth. And so I've heard a range of different opinions and perspectives on that. I'm sure that there's a range of those perspectives for those who are listening and watching with us tonight and joining us. So I'm happy to hear those. And to your point, Deanna, like, this is not. I'm not speaking on behalf of the Latinx community tonight. I'm speaking on behalf of Edgar.
Yes.
And agree or disagree with me. Like, I'm speaking on my behalf, because I think that, again, my belief is that we have to be lockstep with Black folks during this time. But I know some people disagree.
I'm trying to get my, because it looks like our podcast, like, when you can see the comments, I can't figure out why it's not like showing up. So I'm trying to figure out how to post
It's because
it so that
nobody's
way it
talking.
goes on our.
Nobody really wants to talk tonight.
I know, exactly. That's good. Nikki does. We got Nikki here. So thank you for sharing that. But it's good that night that we thought nobody was here, and then we had like 40 comments come through. But yeah, so let's dig in. I mean, I know this is kind of hard. I've been contemplating how to do this, how to do it right, how to do it crazy. But at the same time, like you said, it's just it's our views. It's us. This is us talking. So my biggest thing I think right now is the fact that, like you said at the beginning, I don't know if we were talking on air or not, but the people not speaking up that we know, not just in our communities, but our friends, our white friends, our Latino community that maybe aren't saying anything right now. A lot of trouble because I know what struck me was the fact that when I had a conversation with my child, and she, and they told me,
So Deanna,
Mom,
I don't know. It feels
would
like you're
you be
breaking
friends with someone who hated? Okay,
in.
I
So
wonder if it's
sorry.
me. Like, I don't know what's going on. Should we end it and come back? Something weird happening.
I mean,
Hello?
if you want, or you can just pull out, jump off, and jump back in. I think we're still live streaming, so while Deanna comes back, I don't know if I need to jump off here. I think I'm going to jump out and hop back in.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So, and my daughter was like, so my child was like, Mom, would you still hang around people, even though you knew internally they didn't agree with me, or not just agree, but didn't understand, didn't feel good around the people that are like her. And that really hit me hard, because that's saying, when they talk about the police, there's one bad cop, right? But there's probably 1,000 good cops. But if those people in that precinct know what that one bad cop is doing, how is that not being like him in a way, right? When you're silent, like we keep telling everybody when they're talking about their views, not to be silent, because silent is killer. You're being silent when somebody else is hurting someone else because of, their skin color, who they are, what they believe in. And I'm really trying to fight my battles with that right now, because knowing the people that are silent, that I care about a lot, you think in your head, would they be silent still, knowing that something were to happen to my own child? If they knew something was going to happen to them, and it's a hard thing to live with, because you want to know that everybody's a good person and everybody loves us for loving us, and wholeheartedly, which I feel. But when your voice isn't there to support you, when you know that you've been speaking out and you need the support from your community and you need the support from those who love you, just reaching out and saying, hey, are you okay? hasn't happened a lot. So,
I think it's important that we define what being silent means, because I think that we actually don't know what people do on their own time and outside of social media and outside of spaces. And so I think everybody has their way of engaging in these conversations. Everybody's I live in a world where people are having these conversations at home. People are getting uncomfortable, and just because I don't see you posting on Facebook doesn't mean that I think you're silent. I think what's interesting is like where are we also silent, right? Are we silent in our jobs when we see things happen that we know are questionable, but we don't speak up on behalf of the folks that are there? Are we silent when we have friends that are government politicians who we like, but they're also like making some really interesting conversations? And that's not to make people feel comfortable, because I think ultimately, like, we are all on a journey to understand like what is the best way to engage. And I also want to bring to the point that, while we work on our own issues and while we work on our own, like how we engage in these spaces, there are people that are dying. And so there has to be a sense of urgency associated with that, because whether you're on Facebook talking about it or not, there's plenty of reasons why people can't post on it. Fine. It really is important where you're bringing up these voices and bringing up these conversations, and how you're holding people accountable that are near you and close to you in some of those things. And now I think a lot of people disagree with that tactic, and I'm still learning. I think I create the space where I'm wrong 100% of the time. So
I was going to say 100%.
But I mean, I think it's I don't want to live in a space where, I'm absolutely confident in my opinions and I'm confident in my beliefs, but I'm not stubborn in them, if that makes sense. So if I get new information that allows me to think through critically and to understand a different perspective, I'm absolutely going to take the time to do my homework there as well, which is part of this. And so,
and I think we can agree and disagree, because I think that there's people that feel the way I feel and there's people that feel the way you feel. And I think neither of them are wrong. I think it's just how you interpret and how your world around you is and how you see things, and, so I think that's why this is good to have conversations where you're not like, I hate you, Edgar, because you didn't agree with how I felt like people should, stand up. That's not how this works. You would not be my board chair friend. We wouldn't last very long because we don't agree on a lot of things. And sometimes we do. So
I think we agree more than not. But I will say that, like, this isn't about disagreement anymore, and it shouldn't be about disagreement. This is about being 125% uncomfortable. This is when we see these conversations, we have to live in discomfort. That is the only place that we can grow from. And so whether I'm wrong, whether I say the wrong thing, whether, I'm making an effort to be wrong. I'm making an effort to show up and make those mistakes, because I'm not going to be able to grow as a human being or as an ally or as an accomplice or whatever other word you want to substitute in there to injustice and whatnot if I'm not making the mistakes and learning from them. Sometimes that's learning how to be quiet, and that's a huge issue with me. This. I like to talk. But sometimes it's really also just shutting up, honestly, and just not even allowing. See, even that term, even the word, even the language is important. We have to shift it and making sure that other voices are heard and are brought into the conversation versus your own sometimes.
So what do you, how do we go from here? Like, just within our own communities, because I think we've had many conversations in regards to, our own biases, our own, generational, racism that we've grown up with, and breaking that. And how do you break that? Because that's one of the hardest things to do. And I feel like it's our job to do that, because you've lived in this, growing up, it's like up to a point, and then you have your own family, and you in your mind are like, I don't want this to continue, but how does it stop?
So for me, it's not hard. It's not difficult. And the response itself is not difficult. The solution is not difficult, which is, one, we had to acknowledge that we all live in a system that upholds white supremacy. It upholds racist policy. It upholds racist systems. And so that's that's how it was designed. That's how it was created. That's what we live in. And so none of us are above making racist decisions. None of us are about making racist, like we are not above that. And so we live in that space and it flows through us. And so that's not to excuse it. I'm just saying, like, we live in the ocean of racism. So we have to acknowledge that. Two, we have to do the work ourselves. There are a lot of ideas. I think Laura used to tell me that I was way too conservative for her liking way back when. And so I've done a lot of my own growth. I'm having my own conversations. You know, I've made the mistakes. I've been in those spaces. I have heard and listened. I've always had the ability to just be in the space and listen. And so I'm grateful for that. But we had to talk about our own stuff. And, you know, our community, as much as I absolutely love being Latino, as much as I love being a part of the Latino community, as much as that it is one of my leading identities, I will say that, like, we have a lot of work to do within our own communities. We talk about this. You see this with our educators. You see this with our folks who are talking about colorism, who are talking about racism, who are talking about classism, who are talking about ableism, who are talking about LGBTQIA issues, who are talking about all these other things that we still have a hard time discussing in our own community. And so I see some younger folks out there pushing these conversations and making their voices heard. And I'm inspired by those folks. And then I also see some folks who have been around the block for a while and they've dealt with different levels of this. And so we are all navigating. I tend to believe, and I could be wrong, that we all navigate from our place of how we've learned how to navigate, because I think for most of us, our existence hasn't been entirely safe. And so as humans, you know, we are conditioned to figure out how to survive. And so part of that is that. And so, of course, identity work comes with a lot of trauma. It comes with a lot of healing. It comes with a lot of therapy. It comes with a lot of all these other issues that we may not even have access to. So, you know, I think it starts with us, because I can get mad at everybody who posts something racist on their Facebook wall. Sure. And sometimes I have fun trolling people. I'm not going to lie. I do it. It is a guilt. But at the end of the day, like, I can't be calling other people out if I'm not calling myself out.
Right.
And,
exactly. And that's and I think that's what we're doing here, right? Like, I mean, just, it's not easy to sit on a platform and talk about how you're in a generation of racial, you know, issues, you know, or, you know, how, like, you're opening yourself in to be vulnerable, which is something I tend to do a lot, you know, and probably not in the right spaces. But I feel like it was.
Let me just address that real quick.
Yeah.
There is no wrong space to be vulnerable in. And so I really want to call that out, because I think people have to have the ability to be who they are in whatever space they live in. And so just FYI.
Right. And I appreciate that so much, because I think what happens is people take advantage of that. And I've had that happen. And I think you begin to mistrust, and you don't trust people anymore to be that. And then it's a growing thing for me, and definitely learning as well. But at the same time, I don't want to stop being who I am. And this is just who I am. I'm just an open book almost, and try to help where I can, knowing that I've been through some of this, not all of it, but definitely here to listen. And that's one of the things that's most important, is that, you know, we want to be here for our Black community and our Black organizations that we, or at least I have just barely met, you know, like Kiona Sinks, you know, and doing the amazing work she's doing. And, you know, all the people, you know, that are working hard for their communities. And so I just wanted them to know that, you know, we're doing this here to break down our barriers, so that way we can help and support them even more so, and even help ourselves in our communities.
I'm questioning, like, how this is resonating with those folks who are watching us. So if you have any comments, questions, concerns, feel free to post them. Always love kind of chatting it up, and always love my thinking to be pushed. So just an open invitation on that. Deanna, tell me a little bit more about, like, what else has been on your mind around these conversations.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, the whole thing about the access point, right? So if I wasn't in this space right now, I don't know if I would be okay. I had a personal conversation, and I'm not going to say who it was with, but it really brought out to light the fact of access and the fact that who's going to care about my story? Nobody cares about what happened to me. They were undocumented. They became a U.S. citizen. Their story resonates with so many stories that I hear now, especially working with, like Alex Martinez and, the amazing work that he does with his, the undocumented groups and Casey Moda and KS Moda. And I was asking, right now that feels normal to me to speak out and to want to tell your story and to want to share your journey with others so that way you can help other people. But when I was talking to them, it came to light that not everybody has that, I want to say almost that privilege to do that. And there's so many people out there like that. And so when I do say, why isn't anybody reaching out, or why isn't anybody talking about this, or where are all the community people that, I grew up with? And I'm having that conversation with them. It was like, wow, this is why I would be them right now if I wasn't in the space I'm in right now, and not talking about it. Like I did all those years without having Queer Eye and that open forum and platform to talk about who I am and the struggles I've had. They're exactly in that space that I was in, and I don't know how to. I don't know how to. I don't even know if that's a helping space or not. It's just one of those things that it just was always silent. It's just silent, and it's like, and when in situations like this happen, or when the whole thing happens with the detention centers and immigration, I bet there's a lot of people out there that want to help and join in and see how they could support, but probably just don't have those access points to do so.
So
does that make sense?
It does, and we're gonna have a conflicting conversation today. So I'm praying and hoping that you're ready for it, because
we got 5 viewers right now, so
hey,
we're good.
These 5 viewers are gonna get some tension in this space. So FYI.
Nikki, you ready?
So I'm gonna say this: we have to, as a community, actually, let's just screw that. As people, me and you, we have to stop making assumptions around access, right? Because I think a lot of these assumptions are based on narratives that have been designed to continue to oppress people, period, right? And so access is a very interesting conversation, because yes, the data demonstrates that Black and brown folks don't have access to a lot of things. But when we hear that, we also start making these narratives that they are not resourceful, that they don't have abilities to do certain things, right? And so some people use that data to say, like, no, we got to, instead of saying we have to be more equitable in the way that we think and that we share resources and whatnot, some people utilize that data to say, well, clearly they're not this, they're not resourceful, they don't do this, they're lazy, right? And so that same data point goes both ways. And so for me, like, I really work hard at not making assumptions, because again, to say that people aren't talking about these issues, I don't know that. I'm not talking to a lot of people who I'm not in their space. I'm not in their environments. And so I don't know. And so I don't have clear confirmation. So I'm curious. I remain curious as like, who else is doing this work and who else is talking about these issues and what platforms are they using? Because I'd rather live in a space of curiosity than make the assumption that nobody else is doing this work or nobody else is doing this. So that's my first point. My second point is around access and just platforms in general. We are all influential somewhere in our lives. So for me, whether I had StreamYard or not, whether I had the Latinx Education Collaborative or not, like there is a group of people, including myself, that I can influence, right? And so I think that change starts from a place where, you know what, I got to change myself first. I got to start with me first. I got to make the decisions. I got to be comfortable with these conversations. I have to learn myself. And then I had to engage those that are proximate to me, near me, and talk to them about those conversations, right? And so the change that we're looking for is actually within us and around us. We don't have to have we don't have to have 1 million followers on Instagram in order for us to have our voices heard, right?
Right.
Like now it's helpful. I'm not disagreeing that it is helpful, but like our voices and the value of our voices aren't couched in the fact that, you know, we don't have platforms, because the ability to speak, the ability to write, the ability to live, to breathe, whatever, gives you that right, at least today in this country. And so we have the ability to engage those that are around us in these conversations and to learn from each other in those ways. We also have the ability to ask questions.
Mm-hmm.
And I see this happening a lot in particularly with white friends. And, you know, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to say. I don't know this. I don't know that. Well, this is not new. Like, none of these actions are new. None of the stuff that's happening is new. Like, there has been a lot of work done over the last hundreds of years around these conversations. And so Google is a phenomenal tool. If you do have a person of color friend, I guess it's okay to reach out. But also, you know, I think as we had a conversation with Lalo Moreno a month or so ago, right? Which means if I'm going to teach you something, then maybe you should give me something in return. And I think for her, it was like muffins or cupcakes or something like that. There was a transaction in that, because sometimes you're asking people to relive their trauma. Sometimes you're asking people to be the voice of a community when they're not fully prepared to be that voice. And so we need to start engaging our friends in these conversations, but making sure that we're also providing something in return for that knowledge that's being given. And sometimes it's outright compensation. You know, some of our friends are making hundreds of dollars an hour doing this work. And so when you ask them to do something for free, you know, we're kind of taking advantage of them.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that 110%. Yes. I think when it comes to the point of, because I'm going to disagree here with the access. Yeah, no, I don't agree. I don't agree at all. And this is a friendly conversation.
Yeah.
Because I feel like, yes, you can Google. Everybody pretty much. I mean, there are communities that do not have Wi-Fi and do not have internet and do not have phones and computers. So we do have communities that are not accessible in that factor. But if you do have it, where are you going? Like, okay, say you want to become, like, I'm just going to use my own child for an example because it's personal. More about learning around, you know, unions and social justice, right? Googled it, looked in Kansas City, Missouri. I had someone that I knew of, another person that had somebody at City Hall, emailed City Hall. Nothing in here that they know of anyways. Now, you can't tell me that there isn't people in Kansas City working in social justice work as a union that would in some way want to talk to my child about how they can do more, right, as teenager. And I think that's that's an important question I think a lot of people have. And how I did find somebody was because I had an encounter with somebody knowing me from Queer Eye to meet me, who in turn ended up having a sister who works in the social justice. And they were more than happy to meet my daughter. But the thing is that not everybody has those people. Sometimes the people around you are just as not accessible as you are. Some of them are just trying to make it in this world. You know, just like my oldest son, he's 27 now. I knew about Hispanic Development Fund, but I'm going to be outright honest, and I've told them this as well. I thought that was for white America and only Latinos that had money or that knew people in that area. So first of all, I felt like my own child, even though he was a 3.5, 4.0 student, graduated from Bishop Ward, didn't feel like he even qualified. So he was at Bishop Ward with a Latino population, was in KCK, and still, you can even ask at school. I probably was up there almost every day asking about, should he go here? Should he go there? I don't know anything about college. Help me, help him. You know what I remember about that? He graduated and he got a scholarship to KCK Community College, right? Because that's the only thing we really knew about, right? They didn't even announce it on the stage. He had to sit back while all the other kids that got scholarships got to go up, but he didn't because they forgot about him. So that's what I'm saying. It's like, I personally have been dealt with this for my whole life. And it's hard for people to believe that. It's hard for people to understand that. I think also it's hard for people to really know that, because if you haven't had that point to where you are begging someone at a high school to give you scholarship information because your child is worthy. He is worthy of going to college and on a scholarship. But they didn't tell me anything about HDF. I internet, right? You school scholarships, that comes up, especially Latinos. But I mean, yeah, send in your essay, do whatever. Okay, follow up. Yeah, so yes, I have to disagree, just because being in that space and asking other people on my journey, from my son, who at the time was 18, to now he's 27. And now my daughter is 16, going to be a junior. I have a 15-year-old, and I'm scared to death that this is all happening again, because yes, I have more access points and I have more people I can talk to. So I feel like I'm in that space right now that you just talked about, that space to where, yes, I may not know anybody, but I can Google it. And I probably can find somebody that I might know that might be able to get me in touch with somebody else. You know what I mean? And to be completely honest, feel good about it, feel comfortable about it, feel worthy to be in that space. Because I think when you grow up in a poor situation, your mom and dad, aren't always there. You grew up with your grandparents. You became a mom at 16. Bishop Miege told me to drop out. The counselor told me to drop out because I would never graduate. And that was my senior year. Okay, senior year. I dropped out in December because he said, you do not deserve to be here, because I had a kid. And I wasn't the best at school, but you usually don't tell people that, So a lot of things hindered where I was. And I think a lot of things have hindered me now, that I think I have the points of access and ability to do more. And I think that's why I fight so much, because I've been there. And I know how these people are feeling right now. And I do get it. I get it. We have so much access points and we have so many people we can contact. But at the same time, there are a lot of us that we're forgetting about,
So let me acknowledge this. So
we're like,
Deanna,
where were you, Lori?
So first and foremost, thank you for sharing that.
I just called out a lot of people, so I'm so sorry.
You don't have to apologize for that. No. Here's the thing. Like, that is your story, right? And we were talking about narratives earlier, right? Like the idea of, I'm afraid to tell my story, or like some of us don't have the privilege to tell our stories. But I think in the organizing community, they talk a lot. I don't say we, because I don't say myself as an organizer by any means at all. But they talk about the power of narrative and having people lead from their narratives, because that is where change and action and empathy happen and then occurs. And so what I heard in your story was a lot of pain, a lot of rejection, a lot of trauma, a lot of unnecessary back and forth, a lot of under dehumanizing. I heard a lot of that. And so I understand why you're passionate about the work you do, because you see yourself in the community that you want to serve.
Right? And it's a community that a lot of people don't serve.
Right.
They don't.
Right. Actually, agreed. And you're absolutely right. The way that we disseminate information to students, the way that we engage parents to students in these conversations, the way that we talk about scholarships and who to talk to and who to know and all these other things, that is white supremacy in action.
Yes.
And so
100% agree.
That is what we're dealing with, and that is what we're swimming with, because the system has been designed for it to work like that. And what we lose is, let's just assume that you weren't as resilient as you were. What would happen then?
My child probably would never went to, you know what, to be completely honest, I don't even know if I would be okay. I may just be working. Maybe I would, but I wouldn't be doing the things I'm passionate about right now. And I know, and who knows where my kids right now, 15 and 16, would be,
but and I think that to me is why the work that you do is so important, and that is why, you know, I encourage you to tell your story, and I encourage you to be upfront and be bold and talk about these things, because there are plenty of people who are looking for somebody to model this for them. And to
And
your
that's
point,
yeah.
you know, and I'll share this. My parents came to this country in 1981. We were poor. I didn't know we were poor until like I finally started realizing that like I couldn't have Coca-Cola or McDonald's all at the same time because it was too expensive. You know what I'm saying? Like I understand that. I understand the
Yeah.
feelings of being rejected. I have been called all the names in the book, and like that is still trauma and pain that I carry with me to this very day. But that also
Mhm.
allows me to have empathy for the work that I do, and to understand that, you know what, other people have denied who I am or my identity, whatever it is. Like they have denied me or told me not to be who I am for whatever reason. Multiple people have told me that I wouldn't be successful. Multiple people have told me that like, maybe you should think about doing something else. I've been in that boat. And so the more that I'm surrounded by folks like yourself, and the more that I'm surrounded by folks in our community, the more that I understand like, hey, I'm going to be epic just because I'm epic. And that's who I am. And that's how I want to show up. And that's how I want to be. Doesn't mean that I can't
Yeah.
be wrong. It doesn't mean that anything like that. And so, you know, I think that we need to, for you and me, we definitely need to operate from out of fear and leave that to the behind, because with the privileges that we do have, access and conversations, and all these other things, like it is our responsibility to make sure that the voices that we represent are being heard. And that is what you do
And
very
that's what you
well.
do. And I think that's I lean on you because you are the voice. You are being a voice for those educators that look like us, that I wish I had when I was growing up, right? And I wish my
Can I
kids
push you
had.
with that too?
Yes.
Can I
Oh my
push you with
God.
that too? Like I
You're
am
like
not.
jumping. I'm like in fear.
I love it. I'm not their voice. You know, I think it's really important. Something that I've tried to do and I continue to try to figure out how to do better is share stories, right? And I think that you, with your podcast and what you're doing with Chingón and me with Chicana and all these other things, like you're bringing people to, you're allowing them the space, not even allowing, I hate that word. I got to get rid of my vocabulary. You're giving space to folks to share their story and to amplify it using your network, right? And that is what I aspire to do. These are not my stories to tell. These are our community stories to tell. And I think that that's what's important about this stuff. And this is actually allyship and accomplishment 101. It is not about us. And it's not an opportunity to elevate our stories. It is our opportunity to elevate the stories of others and give them the space to tell their stories. And so I get jumpy on that because like, I'm like, like, I absolutely believe in representation, and I absolutely believe that Latino educators need to be in classrooms today, and I absolutely believe that they need to show up for our students. And I also know that they got their own voices. They're incredibly talented, and you know what? It's my job to make sure that they have a space to share that. I
And
could be wrong,
Edgar,
though.
what you're doing right now is you're providing access to those that don't have it. That's exactly what I'm doing on my podcast, because what the vision for Midwest Chicana became, because when I'm looking back, so this is one of the things. It took somebody from outside of Kansas City to see my ability to be a leader. And it took somebody outside of Kansas City for me to see that I could be a leader. That is the saddest thing I could ever say to somebody, but it's also the realest thing I can say to somebody. And I think I'm going to challenge the people in Kansas City to look beside them, look in front of them, look at the people that you see behind you, and call out their qualities, call out what they are doing and fighting for every day, and no matter what it is, right? I mean, I think right now we're seeing so many people come to light because of what's going on, and they want to help and they want to serve, and they're using their best talents right now, right? But what about when this whole thing is over? Like the whole media is done, we go back to our lives. Those people are just going back to their homes. And did anybody pay attention to what they brought to the table? So I feel like it is our duties as people that have a platform to make sure that those people still are seen and still are heard. And if we have the ability, give them their space. I don't have millions of dollars. I wish I could give everybody, brick and mortar, or I wish I could give everybody their own podcast, not for me to have to lay it out. But hopefully what I'm doing in the process is showing them that I am just a regular person that had all this trauma, had all this crazy, that was never invited. But somehow I made it here, because to be completely honest with Queer Eye, I didn't have to do anything after that, right? Nobody said, keep the space. This is going to be hard, you can give it all up. But that's not me. And that's not what I wanted to do. And that's why I think it's so important for me to share that. And I get a lot of pushback, in the regards of it shouldn't be free. You shouldn't be offering your space. You shouldn't be doing this or that. And at the same time, it's like, somebody did that for me, and why am I not sharing more of it? So I feel like, you are amplifying so many voices that I didn't even know about, that I'm like in awe that these people are not like sitting at City Hall right now, like making the orders and what we should be doing, right? Because that's exactly who should be sitting there right now in City Hall, are the people that you have on your platforms, working hard for everybody, that's educating the younger people that are going to be our future.
It's this work is difficult, and I think that you wear your heart on your sleeve sometimes, right? And so when people deem you unworthy, or when people don't validate you, or when people don't give you those spaces and those opportunities to kind of shine, like, and do that consistently and continuously burn people out, so to speak. I don't have to participate in that. And so for me, I'm like, at the end of the day, there are plenty of people who are going to come out and try to push the boundaries and push me and be against or whatever. And I have had to take the approach around, what's my mission? What's my goals? Mm-hmm. What am I doing this for? Who am I doing this for? What does that look like? Am I living my values the best way that's possible, right? And yep. So what I love about this, what I love about the people that we talk to and the conversations that we have, it's really, there's a lot of genius out there, plenty of genius that is out there, and they sit in all places in society. And so I think that, that's part of where it starts. And, now I would love to get some pushback on that.
I know. I like, where's all our people?
I would love to get some pushback on that. But I think it's important, like, if you lead from a place of love, then, and again, when I say that, lead from a place of love, I don't mean like, let's be peaceful.
Yeah. Right.
I don't mean that. I mean, you know what? I love myself. I love my community. I know my values. I know what I'm accomplished today.
Right. Exactly.
That to me is that it's sometimes you got to fight. So.
Yeah. Look, Lori said genius. There you go. She said, thank you, Edgar.
Yeah. Lori is one of the biggest geniuses I know. I got to tell you. So let's talk about Lori. I love Lori because she is unapologetic. Her spirit is full of joy. She's just fun to talk to, and like, you understand that she's coming with you with all the realness. I think that's a term. And she's just showing up and being who she is. And so, and I see that in you. I see that in Nikki. I see those in the folks. I love people when they are truly who they are, and they don't care. There's the one moment of like, I don't care what anybody says. I'm here and I'm in my moment and I'm in my space and I'm owning it. And so I think Lori, you, Nikki, do that really well. And so it's just fun to see that. And it's fun to see when you're in action and you're like living in your passion and that like you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, the energy that just comes off. That's what we're all after, I think. Hashtag realness. But I mean, it's needed.
And I think you brought up a good point. So this whole conversation, I think, revolves around a lot of people talking about right now, to the mayor, and about how we should train our police force to be, better equipped in regards to working with communities. And I think you hit it on the nail in regards to having empathy and being a part of these communities. First and foremost, understanding where these communities are coming from is so important. I have to give it up for Chato Villalobos. I mean, he is like he grew up, alongside us and became an amazing police officer. And he fights for his community, right? But he fights for everybody. It's not just his own community, but all communities. And I think of him when I'm thinking of, yes, we have so many bad going on, but at the same time, it's like, there's chatos out there that are fighting hard to make it better for all of us. And,
So
I wish, yeah.
I'll speak to that because I think that what we're talking about right now is not necessarily good cop, bad cop. We're talking about
Right.
police brutality, and we're talking about a system that has been set up for hundreds of years that have
Yep.
continuously policed and the actions of Black and brown folks. And so
Yeah.
I think that we have to separate the people from the systems first and foremost. And like we have to continue our focus on calling out the racist and prejudiced systems that are in play, right? And so,
Yeah.
first and foremost, because again, we all live in that and we all breathe in that. And so, this is not about good cop, bad cop. This is really about like, let's address the critical core issues around why police brutality happens, why that's allowed, and why we have conversations like that.
Yes.
So, and that is, Alex Martinez will push me even harder on that, I think. And I hope that he's listening and he can comment on that as well.
I think he's in a meeting right now.
Oh, dang. All right.
I know.
So, and that's like saying, and really this is, it's about, it's like saying Black Lives Matter versus like all lives matters. Like it's these little things that we have to start understanding that, you know what? Black people are disproportionately shot and killed by police officers. Black men are disproportionately shot and killed by police officers. Yeah. And it's not because they're evil. It's not because they're criminals. It's not because of that. It is because of a system that is created around white supremacy. And so we have to address those issues. We have to talk about those issues. We have to be a voice and we have to call and hold people accountable for that. Again, I'm not saying that this is an issue that solely lives in police because it lives in all areas of society. Dang, so are Mexican men. Absolutely. I'm Nicaragüense, so I don't know about that, but that's a joke.
We're gonna beat your ass after this.
Hey, come for me. It's cool. I love it. I will say so. Marissa has another comment on there that I think is really interesting. So, I feel like we all should come from a place of love. However, I don't feel like everyone who has been at the protests are coming from love. Yes, they are passionate about their feelings, but wrecking our city is not the answer. And so, my only push to that is, I tend to see Dr. Martin Luther King quotes with that along. Like the answer is nonviolence, and the answer is coming in arms and linking arms. And I just want to remind folks that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was not the only civil rights leader at the time. There was plenty of people leading, and there was a lot of violence, and there was a lot of pain and suffering and killing, and that occurred not just then. It still goes on to this very day. And so, we have to be really conscientious of, like, again, the systems that we live in. And really go after those versus after some of the reactions. And then I will also say that not every person that is destroying property is Black or brown.
Right.
And so the narratives that are utilized within our communities are Black and brown folks are destroying their cities and their communities. Nobody's talking about the white folks doing that. And so I want to be really intentional about that, because this goes along with the exploitation of Black and brown people throughout centuries of whatnot. And so we have to be really careful with that, because I hear business owners, I understand that I'm not getting into that conversation. I will say that it's not Black and brown folks that are doing this stuff as well. So I'm gonna leave it at that.
Well, and I'm going to say, because first of all, we have a friend in Minnesota whose shop was burned down. And he's a white person and was fighting for the rights, and in the midst of it, and his shop happened to be just in the middle of where this occurred. And then on my other end, my husband has a shop right downtown, on Truman Road. Again, worked his whole life pretty much on his own to build that to what it is now, 20 years ago. But at the same time, it is just like what we were talking about when you grow up in a system that has nothing but the wants of making sure you do not accomplish anything. You do not become a leader in this city because your voice may be amplified and there may be people following you. And do we want that? No, because what happens is an uprising happens, and then the people that are at the top and our gatekeepers, our white gatekeepers, get pushed out. They get shown for their true colors, and then we get in that system and change it. And that is not what these people want us to do. And so when you have those feelings growing up all the time where your voice is always silenced, you're always in that state of trauma, you're always in that state of pain, you're always knowing that your neighbor is probably going to be, calling the cops on you someday, or because you have a camper outside, they want to call the police. It's bullshit. It is. It's bullshit living. You cannot live in even your own home and have a sanctuary place, because every day you walk outside of your backyard, you see those people and you're like, fuck that. Sorry, I'm just really mad, because it really hurts me, because I know that feeling. Because if this happened to my kid, I would probably burn this freaking city down. I would. But the thing is, I don't condone violence, and I don't condone, the pain that's causing these business owners. But at the same time, we have to realize where this pain is coming from. Like you said, how are we fixing that? How are we making sure that our people, our generations coming up, know that we support them and we are with them, and they are no different than we are? We're not doing that right now. Like this whole conversation was about our own families, our own friends have their own, racial stigmas and generations of things going on. And it's like, how do you even build it up when your own families have that built in them,
You got to start with yourself. And I think,
Yeah.
you have to work through your own biases. You have to work through your own issues. You have to do the work yourself. Nobody can do that for you. And so part of doing that work is listening. Part of doing that work is being uncomfortable. Part of doing that work is talking to folks like yourself. Maybe it's a direct message. Maybe it's a private phone conversation. Hey, I didn't like what you said about that. Help me understand where you were coming from. Right. And also to know that, like, we are all learning, and we are all in this journey, and we're on very different ends of this journey. So I know you pulled up Lori's comment.
Yes. I am the mother of a Black son, and it is exhausting every morning praying for his safety from the streets and driving to and from, and when he arrives back home, thanking God for his delivery back home.
Will you pull up Marissa's comment? And Marissa, thank you so much for engaging with us. These are really good comments, and I appreciate you joining us. My problem is also these protests going on. Why we have not this big of a protest for the families who have separated at the borders. So a couple of things there.
And can I say, Edgar, real quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
This question a lot. A lot of this is circling around our community.
And you know what? Let's say it's a fair question. First and foremost, we have to think of it from an idea of solidarity. And so I'm gonna quote Dr. King. One of my favorite quotes is, "Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere." And so in the concepts of solidarity, we have to show up for our Black and brown folks, even if we feel like they're not going to show up for us. Because at the end of the day, when you're talking about equity work and you're talking about racial work, you have to show up for the bookends, and then you got to work in between. Because if it's good for the bookends, it's good for everybody in the middle. So first and foremost, and so we have to do the work to show up regardless of our own biases. Two, I've been to El Paso. I was in El Paso the week that that white terrorist shot all those people at the Walmart. And so what I saw on the outskirts was Black and brown people paying respects, holding up signs, protesting, and being in solidarity. I've been to the Rio Grande Valley, where I see Black and brown folks, although the population numbers are dramatically different, showing up and protesting at the borders. And so I've seen that on the ground. And so that, to me, is important to call out, because we are in solidarity. We can't let these narratives destroy our communities together. And so for me, it's so important that we think about, like, what does actually solidarity look like, and what do we have to do to show up, because it's ourselves. We can't place this work or blame on anybody else but ourselves. So how are we showing up in these spaces and times? Because I will say this. I think I made a comment like that. I see Irene with us, and Irene will vouch for this. I'm like, why aren't we doing more? Just randomly one day I call her, why aren't we doing more for the DACA situation, the immigration situation? Why are we not writing? Why are we not doing this? And Irene's like, who are you talking about? And I was like, well, I just don't see it happening. I'm like, well, are you showing up? Fair question.
Yeah, it is a fair question.
Are you showing up to these conversations? Are you showing up to these? There are plenty of organizers out here doing this work. Just because they're not in my purview doesn't mean it's not happening, right? And so we have to limit those assumptions. And then too, Irene reminded me that her organization does that work every day. So
yes, they do.
Yep. So will you pull up Susanna's comment?
Yeah. Hold on. Okay.
Also, it's not fair for us to tell anyone how to react to the injustices. Peaceful protests are being had. Pain that the Black community is facing is deep rooted. They have the right to be angry, not condoning anything, but the violent parts are a small percentage of what's going on. So I'm going to also say this. It is not our place to condone and nothing like this. Susanna, you and I are going to have a discussion about this tomorrow too, because I know we get into it deep as well.
I'm glad I'm not the only one.
No, I'll tell you this. These are incredibly difficult and complex conversations, right?
But see, we all come from different places.
Absolutely.
Right?
We have to.
Space. Yeah.
But we don't have to. It is not for us to condone anything. Actually, it is up for us to show up in solidarity with people who are suffering. Nobody's asking you to go riot. Nobody's asking you to go loot. But are you showing up? And I think that that's where we have to start. And so before we police, we ourselves police anybody else in the community, we have to start with ourselves. Like, how are we showing up and how are we being held accountable? And so can you go to Jose's comment? I'm sorry.
You're on fire now.
There's no playbook on protesting or on rioting, but there is a playbook on how to be a police officer. Okay, I'm going to show you. I'm going to share this with you, which is, I think, something that always will stick with me and will stick with me forever. So I was at a luncheon that was hosted by a local organization, and they had representatives from the police department up there and whatnot. And somebody asked, because it was around police brutality, right? It was around the same conversations that we're having today, and it wasn't that long ago. And the conversation was like, what are you doing to help address race and equity issues within the police department? And the person that was up there spoke and said, we do 1 hour a year on diversity and inclusion issues. 1 hour a year.
Wow.
My life, my experiences as a Latino, and whether my friends, my Black friends, my non-Black, like, what doesn't matter, whether they're my friends or not.
Yeah.
Their lives are based on whether you can understand racism, equity, all the biases and all these systemic issues 1 hour a year. That to me is problematic. And I'm not saying that to me is problematic. And so it hurts. This is where it pains me, because I have seen a lot of my friends in the last couple of weeks, actually in the last year, in the last 2 to 3 years, actually the last 5 years, pain and suffering. Pain and suffering because of racist conversations, because of racist comments, because of racism in general. There are people that are dying today simply because they're Black or brown.
Right.
That's it.
Yep.
And if we can't address that, then what are we doing? Exactly.
That's the whole thing. It's And what is our city doing to ensure that that we're safe, right? Because I'll be honest with you right now, I don't. And I'm a lighter skinned Latina, right? I'm lighter skinned. I'm not even in the realm of, you know, being targeted as some of my friends and family are. And that comes with privilege. And it feels like, you know, but what can we do to ensure that there's more than a 1 hour a freaking year? Like, how does that even get past anybody? That's what I'm talking about. Like, these gatekeepers have their gates shut so tight that anyone trying to even access that is somehow or another blocked. I can't. I mean, even within my art organization, I say this all the time, and I say this every time. I don't care. There is so many gatekeepers in that circle. It is beyond me how anyone besides who they want in these organizations survives. And that is such a true statement with not only the brown organizations, but also the Black organizations. And especially if you don't have access. And I'm going to bring that word back again, because if you have no access, you might as well forget it, because you'll be fighting for your entire life to be open. And I feel that right now. I feel it. If I didn't have little bits of pieces of access points of people that I know in these art organizations that are helping the most they can, I would be dead they'd be dead. I wouldn't even be what I'm doing right now, and helping those people that have no voice, that don't have the ability to stand up and fight and get that platform to make their voices louder. Okay, there's a lot of comments. I'm trying to figure out which one. So Kiona was on here, and definitely want to. Where is she? Where's her first one? Okay, so I think she's replying to Marisa. If you pay attention to the process, it's individuals protesting in the name of Black Lives Matter, and they aren't. I'm not condoning violence, but we can build buildings again. We can't give human life back. She's still here. Yes. Absolutely. Edgar, you got quiet. You're making me nervous.
No. You know, I'm in my learning mode. Can you pull up Irene's comment?
Yeah, hold on 1 second. This one right here?
Yeah.
Okay.
So Irene, when we describe our community as reaching for the American dream, we must own our own biases of reaching something defined as affluent, white, etc. It is a mother's, father's, grandparents' dream. My heart breaks thinking about African Americans that just want their sons to come home. It is not a ladder to climb, leaving people behind it. It is a representation and a table for all. I think I'm at a loss for words because.
Do you need a minute?
No, this is good. I'm at a loss for words because George Floyd was murdered.
Mm-hmm.
He was murdered. Trayvon Martin was murdered.
Yeah.
Sandra Bland was murdered. People are dying simply because they are Black or brown.
Mm-hmm.
Kids in cages, walls being built up, all these other things because of white supremacy.
Absolutely.
And if we as a community can't get angry about that, there is no peace in murder. No peace whatsoever. And so when we say to folks, you have to be peaceful, it's hard for me to reconcile that with murder.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
That's my journey, and maybe I'm wrong, but it's hard for me to do that. And so, like you said, I'm not gonna condone anything because it's not my place. It is not my place to tell people how to protest. It's not my place to do any of that. Doesn't mean I don't love my city or I don't want to see other things. That's not what I'm saying. If we can't talk about the root cause of these issues and these behaviors and what's going on, and we can't address them face to face, then what are we even doing?
So Edgar, I have a question to ask our viewers and you. We got this anger, right? How do we come together and fight the system? How do we make an actionable thing to where we break it down? Like, stop with the, just out, we're protesting and, we're mad and angry. But how do we also make it a point to where we are actually breaking something in the system? I want to see and us get together and break the freaking walls down, whether that's for the immigration centers, whether that's for, stop killing, our kids. Where do we break it down? And who in the community knows where the freak we start to get that uprising? Because that's exactly what I'm going to call it, a freaking uprising of what needs to happen.
I got to tell you that the uprising is happening in the plaza right now. And people say, is it effective? Is it not effective? I'm going to say this. The Missouri National Guard is 3 blocks away from where I live, protecting City Hall.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody's responding to something there.
Absolutely.
And so I don't understand anymore. And this is, Irene, I'm going to have to reach out to you because you usually talk me through these issues. And your leadership has, often like brought me back down to peace. Black and brown people are dying.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how else to say that. I get terrified of my mom. My mom and my dad, they live in a small town in South Carolina. A small town in South Carolina. Now, mind you, it was their choice to move there. And I don't know why. I tried to talk to them about not moving there because I didn't find their neighbors to be too friendly. And I didn't really like the Confederate flags that people were flying around their neighborhood or their house or whatever. But my parents live there. And my mom, who is, I don't know, maybe 65, maybe 70. I can't keep up with her. She walks by herself in that neighborhood, knowing, and I know every day that she walks by herself in that neighborhood, and I am terrified that somebody is going to kill her. Mm-hmm. Not because she did anything wrong, and not because she whatever, only because she looks the way she does.
Yep,
that
absolutely.
Is a reality that I try to forget every day. That is a reality as to why, I don't like to call my mom because I'm afraid that I'm going to find out that something happened to her because she does that. I am terrified for folks in our community because I don't care whether you're conservative or liberal. I don't care what's going on and any of the other things. I don't care where you sit on that. If you are brown or black in America, you're more likely to die than not.
Yep, absolutely.
I don't know how else, like the data is what the data is. And so we have to create these spaces and we have to continue these conversations and we have to start with ourselves because you know what? If I get a phone call one day from my dad or my brother telling me that my mom was murdered by simply taking a walk.
Yep.
Which is what I believe happened to Ahmaud Arbery. Yep. Do you not think that I'm not going to burn the entire town down?
Yeah, exactly.
And so I'm not here to police people.
Yeah.
But I will say this. We have to talk about the underlying core issues. We have to talk about anti-blackness. We have to learn how to become anti-racist. And it is an everyday thing.
The thing is that I feel you 110%. I think this is the realest conversation you've had, Edgar. I don't know if I've ever heard you in this space like this before. And I thank
angry.
you.
I am so angry right now. I'm angry because we have to, it is our responsibility to show up on behalf of our Black brothers and sisters.
Mm-hmm. It is.
They're coming for us too, y'all.
Oh, they already are. They already are. And I want to definitely say, Miguel, thank you for being here, because in my own personal space, just like you said, Edgar, I watch my child leave my home every day, and I wonder if she is going to be hurt just because of how she looks, in ways that I cannot talk about here, because again, it's the whole thing of hurting people that love you love and you respect, and holding that in, but at the same time trying to protect somebody that you could not come home. And I want to tell Miguel, thank you for all you do. You and Alex and so many others that work for the LGBTQ people of color, Marie Jensen, Alex Salazar, because that's a whole other, like not even other, that's a whole piece of this realm that, are being killed, are being bullied, every day, that we don't hear about as well, and you're right, Miguel, that's the whole thing. It's like, how do we break these systems? How do we break? I mean, there's so many underlying systems here that need to be broken, and how do you break them?
You start with yourself.
Yeah.
That's it. I mean, if we get caught up in like how overwhelming all this work is, then we never move forward. You got to break it within yourself. And I'm on my journey again. I always say that I'm going to write a shirt that says I'm on my journey. But actually, can you bring out Susana's?
Yeah.
Having real conversations with white people, our Latinx community, we hold bias, we hold stereotypes. Not only we do, but not that only we do, but we do. Getting educated. Can you also bring up her last comment?
Let me see. Here we go. Yeah.
I don't think there's one answer but putting pressure on politicians. Of course, there's so much corruption there, but local officials have power on our day-to-day. State officials have power on our day-to-day. Call, email, text, tweet, write a letter, vote, get racist, sexist, etc. bigots out. Listen, it starts with ourselves. There are plenty of organizations out there doing the good work. El Centro does phenomenal work in organizing folks and getting folks out to be in the political processes. There's plenty of people doing this work. And so we're happy to connect you. I think Deanna and myself, we've always been committed to making sure that we are expanding our networks and sharing them with who we can and when we can. And so you can continue to count on that for us. Miguel has a comment there. In my opinion, a real leader is someone who looks around and says, I can't live one more day like this. And if no one is going to do anything about it, then I guess it will have to be me.
I think that's what's happening. And we're like, I feel you, Miguel, I feel you. And it's like, how do we do this? I think it's one of the hardest things I've ever had to do in my entire life. And I don't know how to do it. Right. Because I feel like when you feel like you're doing the right thing, there's always someone back there saying, that ain't right. Don't do it. Stop. And why are you doing it? You shouldn't be doing it. Like, there's other people more knowledgeable, more educated, more this, more that should be in that space doing that for our cities. And I'm just like, at that point, like, no, that's not happening anymore. It's not. And how do we, as these just people wanting to fight the fight, get out there and do that, and it's, yep, we do. We need more Black and brown people to run for office. Absolutely. And there's another access point. If it wasn't for Maite Salazar running for Congress, I wouldn't even know one inkling about that process. Or Randy Lopez running for the school board in KCK. Never have known anything about that, It's those whole access points and learning and finding out how you do that. Like, how are we teaching our kids? You know, who's teaching our kids how to do this? Because I know my kids don't know how. I'm still trying to find a freaking union thing to help my daughter, you know, or someone to talk about social justice. It's like, I mean, how are we supposed to help them get into these spaces when I myself don't even know how to do it?
Will you pull up Irene's comment real quick? And you know, I'm about to go emotionally eat some ice cream. So FYI, I think that this is a good place to end this conversation on tonight. Anyone can lead from any place or position. And so it starts with you all. We're happy to engage in these conversations. We're happy to engage in this dialogue. But it definitely starts with you. So.
Okay, I know we went way past our time, right? But these are good conversations. This is what we need to start having. And we have a mayor. We work with the mayor on June 24th. Trying to get a town hall with that. So please send in questions or what you would like for him to know. And yeah, we'll continue having these open spaces and conversations. Irene has one last thing too. Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. And I know these are great. We have to create those white spaces. Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you guys. I mean, I know we started late. I know there was a lot of things going on prior to us getting on and all of that. So I apologize. You know, we kind of started this a little bit later, but this was great conversation and it has to keep happening, right? You good, Edgar?
I'll be good.
You get that what you get that goodness and have like an amazing evening. And yeah, no, it's I know. We got to figure this out. We got to figure this out, right? I don't know.
As somebody who I admire, Nicole Price says, we got work to do.
Yeah.
So, all right. Thank you, everyone.
All right. Bye. Bye.